Howdy folks, Jambareeqi here. Aardman Animation have a wholesome brand on the surface, but their collective work can also have hints of grim realism. I mean, they started off as a studio by making dark experimental shorts that were more for adults. This macabre side also sometimes translates into their many twisted villains, who I'll be ranking today. I'll be counting baddies from their feature films and all of the Wallace and Gromit shorts. So let the ranking begin. Lord Noof from Early Man. When Lord Noof, leader of the Bronze World, turns the Stone Age's valley into a mine, Doug the Caveman challenges Noof to win back the valley. I'd class Early Man as Aardman's weakest feature film to date, so it's no surprise that I'd pick Noof for the worst Aardman villain. Now sure, I know that he's mainly supposed to be a comedic villain. I'm not going to pretend that he's meant to be taken seriously, but as a comedy antagonist, Noof never really made me laugh, ever. Heck, he's the least funny character in the whole film because he tries way too hard to get his laughs, instead of naturally earning them like other characters in the film do.
I mean, we all know what losers cavemen are, so Stone Age dolts couldn't beat their own grandmothers.
So, because he's so unfunny, I'm left scraping for something else to compensate for all his rubbish jokes. But every other aspect of Noof fails too. He spends the whole film whining, complaining and being pampered, all while his football team practice without any of his personal coaching, and his minions do all the research on his caveman rivals.
Sire, we found something else down in the new mine in the valley.
We've made a copy for your inspection.
I can't say that he's intimidating in the slightest either, because he's just a buffoon with a silly French accent, and when he's the underling to the Queen, who treats him with abuse and disrespect, all while he cowers below her.
Wait a minute! She shouldn't even be on the pitch!
And why not?
Because she's a
Oh, and the movie makes him the butt of the joke at every turn. Look, I'm all down for a fascist villain getting humiliated, but the movie makes Noof the punchline so often that he ends up losing all of his cred as a baddie. I mean, he literally gets shat on in one scene, and most of his comical reactions to every embarrassment are too flat to be funny. I wouldn't even say that he's entertaining to hate. He's on the mildly annoying end of the villain spectrum, and Aardman only lets him nibble on his evil. He's a bad person for sure, and I don't like any of the things he's trying to do, but I didn't resent him enough to enjoy booing him.
You think you can beat us at football?
He does have his calculated moments, but they come in rare spades. Like when he uses info gathered on the cavemen to crush Doug's spirit before the game, or the part where he intimidates his football team with execution if they lose. So yeah, he's capable of threat or strategy, but for the most part, he's too childishly impulsive for me to credit him as a smart villain.
I am the new ref.
That's not fair!
Oh, isn't it? Let's ask the new ref. Ref, is it fair? Oh yes, it's totally fair.
I'd best sum him up as a more boring and diluted version of Prince John from Disney's Robin Hood, an authoritative villain whose patheticness is actually hilarious, because there's strong humour to come from his over-the-top diva reactions to every humiliation he faces. But he also has a fine dine buffet on his evil. His temper can be intimidatingly unpredictable, and he's actually consistently cunning on his own merits.
I have it. I'll use that fat friar as bait to trap Robin Hood.
Here's how you do this villain trope right. Cooker. From A Grand Day Out. When Wallace and Gromit travel to the moon to picnic on its cheese, they're cracked down on by the moon's authoritative guard, a robot resembling a cooker. Despite having no face or voice, he's rich in personality thanks to his expressive robotic hands. His gesticulations do a lot of work to get across his stuffy character. While his policing seems to be just tuts and tickets for Wallace and Gromit at first, I would not say that he's harmless, because it's revealed that he's armed with a baton, which can be a dangerous weapon in aggressive hands. And it's arguable whether the crime matches the punishment. Cooker might be physically limited as a free-wheeled oven, but there's still a relentlessness to his automated mission. Nothing can talk him out of following protocol, as he puts the moon's environmental safety before everything. This isn't just a happy-go-lucky cheese-tasting vacation for Wallace and Gromit. They've chosen a trip destination that puts Wallace in constant danger. And, as an audience, all we can do is bite our nails while screaming, "It's behind you!" like it's a panto farce. As much of an antagonist Cooker is though, he's endearingly humanised when he discovers the earthly custom of skiing. The guy must live a boring life on the moon, experiencing nothing but pure existential monotony, only programmed to follow one duty every time he's turned on. So it makes total sense that he craves some fun deep down. This leads to an ending full of conflicting emotions. As Cooker maniacally breaks into the ship to visit Earth, we're afraid for our hero's safety, but also feel for this robot's need to live his dream. Luckily though, a really sweet compromise is made, in which Cooker accidentally makes a pair of skis from Wallace's rocket, giving us the only time in which a Wallace and Gromit villain has ever been granted a happy ending. Heck, you could argue that Cooker's character arc steals the spotlight from our cheese-loving duo. Lord Victor Quartermain from The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. Quartermain is a professional hunter who wants to marry the kindly Lady Tottington to expand his own wealth, but he feels challenged when Totty falls for inventor Wallace, who is running a humane pest control service. However, when it's revealed that Wallace is actually the rumoured were-rabbit, Victor plans to kill Wallace and become a local hero. Now, I have to admit that Quartermain is basically a British Gaston. The comparisons are very, very easy to make, so I can't really credit him for being an original or fresh character. I also wouldn't say that he's an effective deceiver, because Lady Totty, bless her, isn't exactly hard to con.
Victor, I have to know, did it suffer?
Of course not, my dear. Not yet, anyway.
However, multiple viewings of this film have made me grow to admire Quartermain's qualities as a villain. Sure, he's one of the less intimidating Wallace and Gromit baddies, but he's certainly a 7 or 8 on the evil meter. Like, even though Wallace has invented a simple and easy way to humanely remove rabbits, Quartermain is still casual about taking them out the old-fashioned way, just because he sees it as a fun chance to play with his Boom Boom toy.
Victor, hadn't we agreed? No more thoughtless killing.
Quite right, my dear. So I've thought this one through very carefully. It's off to bunny heaven for you, big ears.
This lord also knows that the were-rabbit is the innocent Wallace, yet he harbours no guilt over trying to kill him. Heck, his jealousy towards Wallace's competition for Totty's heart makes the murder attempt a pleasure for him.
You commissioned me to rid you of pesto, and that's just what I intend to do. Oop.
Huh? Quartermain also demonstrates strategy skills. Yes, he's a trigger-happy gun nut, but he doesn't charge headfirst as a were-rabbit hunter. He actually takes the time to research Wallace's weakness from a trustworthy expert before any shooting begins.
What kind of bullet?
A bullet of pure gold.
He also knows that Gromit is his biggest obstacle in his assassination of Wallace, so he's smart enough to trap the loyal dog, a tactic that will help his scheme play out more smoothly in execution.
Everyone's been looking forward to a good show. Let's see they get one.
Oh, and right from the moment we see this arrogant twit's nasty, smug smirk, we wish for a big fall from grace for him. But Aardman slightly restrain themselves and make us wait impatiently. We're forced to suffer watching him get his way for a lot of the film, so his eventual public scrutiny, which does not hold back, ends up being very, very rewarding.
No one beats Victor Quartermain!
Is that so? Consider yourself dumped.
Quartermain might not be one of my top favourite Aardman villains, but even I, one of his lesser fans, will agree that the effort was made. The Toad from Flushed Away. Toad is a slimy criminal who lives in a rat-populated sewer city, which doesn't sit well with him as a snobby hater of rats. For a comedy villain, Toad isn't particularly funny. If I'm honest, his minions are far more hilarious, and work well as goofballs who comically play off of Toad's uptight pompousness, so yeah, excels the most as a straight man.
Well, we got most of it, boss.
Forget the ruby! It's the Master Cable that I want!
There's some entertainment to be had with his upper-class snootiness for sure too, mainly because he thinks he's way more classy than he actually is. Like, he brags about having a cultured royal museum, but it's just a bunch of gift shop knickknacks.
Victoria's bust, wrought in porcelain.
Classy.
Quite lifelike, wouldn't you say?
The always wonderful Ian McKellen is on point as Toad's voice as well. McKellen's campiness is all out behind the microphone, and he oozes pretentiousness with every smug line delivery.
So, you thought you could make a fool of the Toad, eh?
Aardman clearly had a riot, animating to Ian's deliciously campy performance too. Because Toad's character animation is undeniably laced with exuberant energy, with every movement tailored to the character's ostentatious personality, there's actually some personal incentive behind Toad's rodent prejudice too. You see, he once belonged to Prince Charles as a pet, so he has tasted luxury, but he was replaced by a pet rat. Even though Charles was the one who abandoned him, Toad decided to seethe towards ratkind. This brings me on to his big scheme, which, in all frankness, is extremely dark for a family movie. Once he can get his hands on a stolen cable, he plans to open the sewer gates so that he can drown every rat to death and repopulate the city with his own babies. That is honestly f***ed up.
You're too late to do anything. You and your kind are finished.
There are certainly superior Aardman villains on this list, but the Toad is a pretty fun evil amphibian, mainly carried by a terrific voiceover performance and a memorably dark antagonist scheme. Agent Red from Farmageddon, a Shaun the Sheep movie. This special agent has been assigned to investigate an alien sighting in Mossingham, and said space creature has befriended our beloved Shaun the Sheep. Agent Red commands herself with a lot of professionality. Everyone looks to her for leadership, and she takes this job very, very seriously. She's no nonsense and by the books. If a paranormal report turns out to be a fluke, she refuses to waste time on it. At first, we see her solid determination as just a sign that she wants to do a good job for the government, but then we learn more about her. You see, as a little girl, she witnessed her very own alien sighting, but faced mockery and ridicule when she told everyone about it. So ever since then, she's put her blood, sweat and tears into saving her reputation. This character development adds a fun extra layer to her antagonism, because now we see that her motives are coloured with emotional bias. This is more than just about her career, it's her key to public validation.
Ooh.
Red's minions are also a fantastic bunch of comic relief characters that all wonderfully play off of her as a straight woman. These henchmen really complete her villain package, from the bumbling and dim-witted hazmat suits to a loyal and adorably charming robot. Red's relentless will to catch Shaun's alien hits its peak in the climax when she pilots a mecha to get the job done at all costs, with said mech making for a truly intimidating final boss for Shaun, and the ultimate obstacle for his signal tower climb. When the alien's parents arrive, we assume that Red will go straight into special agent mode and cruelly capture these space creatures. That's not her instinct though, she instead feels joy and peace. She thought that she wanted to repair her reputation, but she realizes that she just needed validation for what she saw as a kid. Agent Red earns her very own redemption arc, going from being a serious antagonist in an ET story to an emotionally vulnerable woman who finds peace with her childhood. Trumper from the Shaun the Sheep movie. After Shaun and his sheep friends go into the big city to find their missing farmer, they have to deal with Trumper, the egotistical boss of an animal pound. Trumper really craves respect as an animal catcher, but most people won't give him the time of day. This frustration makes him a sour and bitter man. His only joy comes from the pride he feels from his collection of strays, which he loves to flex to strangers. It's a lot of fun to hate him, because Aardman goes ham on his immaturity and cruelty as a villain, with his arrogance being high enough to make us deeply resent him. He doesn't care about his strays finding loving homes, he just sees them all as his prisoners to taunt and trophies to case. Like any Shaun the Sheep character, he has no actual dialogue, just noises and grunts, which I can best describe as very British sounds. Iranian British comedian Omid Jalili's vocal effects are chef's kiss. Aardman were very strict about the sounds he made, and the discipline shows. When Sean successfully escapes the pound, a very personal vendetta is born between man and sheep. I mean, Sean put a dent on Trumper's very tender pride, so of course revenge is on the menu. Trumper is worth fearing too, because as obnoxious as he is, pest control is still his expertise, plus his trademark claw and slick safety banners are bound to strike fear into strays. But at the same time, jokes are made at his expense, and they're all gags that show how he can let his ego distract him. I think what could be best appreciated about him though, is how Trumper is the antithesis of Sean's beloved farmer. While the farmer cherishes his animals as loved ones, Trumper has dedicated his whole identity to hating animals, and the farmer even gets to scold Trumper's abusive antics.
Hey, what?
Trumper goes to show that you can come up with an animated villain who doesn't utter a single piece of dialogue, yet the audience will passionately despise him and cheer on his defeat. Preston from A Close Shave. Preston is a sheepdog belonging to timid wool shopkeeper Wendelin. Behind closed doors though, Preston is rustling sheep for his own dog food company. Preston is quite intimidating for a plasticine dog, from his cold demeanour to his casual bullying of the wholesome Gromit. He's got this mafia gangster vibe to him. We don't trust or like him on first sight, and our judgment becomes valid as soon as we follow him more and more. He's up to something, we just know it. But director Nick Park cleverly keeps the truth vague right up until the dog food conspiracy is made clear. However, once the cat is out of the bag, Preston deviously and sneakily frames poor Gromit, the only one who clued in on Preston's underground crime. It's like Gromit is being punished for doing the right thing. With our detective hero behind bars, Preston can now 100% commit to his project without any suspicion or interruption. Oh sure, Wendelin, who is on board with the rustling until it becomes all about dog food, tries to stand up to a sheepdog, but it is useless.
It wasn't so bad when it was just the wool, but this is evil! Daddy didn't create you for this.
And this is actually the final clue for the short's biggest reveal of all, the truth that Preston is really a cyborg. Which, trust me, makes 100% sense when you rewatch the way that Aardman animated Preston throughout the short. The more that's dropped on us about Preston's scheme, the more shocking it becomes. He's not only built a secret unlicensed slaughterhouse under everyone's noses, but he's also transformed Wallace's well-meaning knitting machine into a meat-crunching sheep mincer, giving us one of the darkest Aardman villain plans ever. Preston is also even more threatening as a robot too, because he can now finally show off his immense super strength. Plus, you can't reason with him. He's a soulless machine determined to make his company a success. I can even imagine kids being scared by his sharp jaws, unfeeling eyes, and creepy mechanical roar. Luckily, in the end, Preston is crushed by his very own slaughter machine, then recycled into a good boy. But I'm sure that the traumatizing fight against Preston will always stay with our wholesome characters. Pella Bakewell from A Matter of Loaf and Death. When Wallace and Gromit, who have started a baking company together, go on a bread delivery run, Wallace ends up meeting former baking company mascot Pella Bakewell. Not long after, the two of them fall in love and get engaged. But Gromit learns that Pella is actually a serial killer, and Wallace will complete her baker's dozen. Even though Pella is a dangerous monster, there's a campy appeal to her divaness and flamboyance that's highly entertaining. She's like a carry-on comedy character that's gone deranged, right down to the silly quips and puns.
Leave it to me.
Oh, you're so brave, Wallace. My minced pie.
Beneath this campiness, though, is an Aardman villain who is disturbingly accurate to real-life domestic narcissists. And I say this as a survivor of such abuse myself. She uses all the tactics and mind games that typical household abusers go for, all while putting on a mask to hide the demon she really is.
I'm so sorry, Wallace. So sorry. I don't know what came over me. Apart from the flower, of course.
Oh.
This is also one of the rare times in which Gromit, who is usually the dashing hero, falls victim to the power of our villain, as Pella takes advantage of Wallace's naive innocence to become a figure of authority in the house.
Ow! It bit me!
Pella's ability to take on a jolly British housewife persona not only helps her to avoid suspicion and play innocent, but also works as an effective cover while she's trying to foil Gromit, which can make for infuriatingly frustrating losses.
I know we're going to get on like a house on fire.
Even Pella's own dog, Fluffles, is clearly traumatized, haunted by Pella's string of barbaric murders, and terrified of what her mistress will do if she disobeys her, with a constant shivering signaling red flags quite early on.
You cross me once too often, you treacherous little...
I also found Pella's backstory to be well textured. A once successful model who let her sweet tooth get the best of her, which led to her losing her job. There's a hint of tragedy to this backstory, but our sympathy ends up getting lost. She could have pointed the finger at the shallow fat phobia of advertising companies, or found a career as a plus-size model, but she instead chose to commit to a bizarre murder project while unfairly blaming bakers for her downfall.
A curse on bakers and their loathsome confection!
Amazingly, in a break of Wallace and Gromit formula cliche, it's the deeply traumatized Fluffles who ends up stealing the hero spotlight. With support from the loving Gromit, she overcomes her fears and stands up to her bully.
Come to mummy, Fluffy Wuffy!
Pella embodies the glamorous campiness of classical animated villains of yesteryear, while also cementing herself as one of the most sinister and disturbing Aardman baddies to date. She's a truly stellar stop-motion mistress of evil. Mrs. Tweety from the Chicken Run movies. Tweety is a chicken farmer who tires of making minuscule profit, so she decides to turn her chickens into pies for bigger revenue. However, Ginger the chicken is secretly leading an escape heist. Somehow, this Aardman/DreamWorks movie managed to turn a Yorkshire farm lady into one of the scariest animated movie villains of all time. This scowling and snarling devil woman who has traumatized many kids. It's pretty disturbing how much she casually enjoys slaughtering her own chickens. Offing her poultry isn't a reluctant part of her job, she sees it as one of the rare fun perks. When a pie-making machine finally arrives, she's overcome with an unsettling amount of happiness, genuinely thrilled at the idea of killing Ginger and her friends for big quid.
Imagine it. In less than a fortnight, every grocer's in the county will be stocked with box upon box of Mrs. Tweedy's homemade chicken pies.
Chicken Run is a film drenched in bleak hopelessness, all because Mrs. Tweety has made it pretty much near impossible to escape her farm. From Mr. Tweedy's obsessive patrolling to the threat of vicious guard dogs. However, Mrs. Tweety is at her most intimidating when the chickens finally escape using a homemade plane. This is when our villain goes completely berserk, desperate to keep hold of a gold mine. Just last year, Aardman released a brand new Chicken Run sequel, Dawn of the Nugget, which knocked a few points off of Tweety's chances of ranking higher. This mediocre, belated sequel didn't exactly ruin Tweety's legacy, but it certainly left a little stain. I mean, it's baffling enough that a villain who clearly got killed in movie 1 is magically back without any explanation, but it's also very disappointing that a revenge scheme is just the same business again, but with extra steps. Through the introduction of a chicken hypnosis gimmick,
It's me!
Yet she's clearly learned her lesson from the last movie, but I find her new corporate lair to be way less interesting than the first movie's farm. We've gone from a dystopian prison with a grim Yorkshire backdrop to a gigantic factory with luxurious interiors and excessive flashy security. Sure, she has a smarter husband this time for a sidekick, but said hubby is still a bumbling comic relief who constantly annoys his cold, harsh wife. So really, he's just Mr. Tweety with a science degree.
Honestly, that man is about as much use as a headless...
The film does attempt to make Tweety and Ginger's reunion come off as personal, but for the most part, it's very, very phoned in, consisting mainly of pandering nostalgic fan service.
Bye-bye. Again.
If Chicken Run 2 did not exist, then I would have put her at number 2 or maybe even 1, but sadly that's not the case. Feathers McGraw from the wrong trousers. When Wallace and Gromit face bills that need paying, Wallace lets a mysterious bird live with them for rent. However, this shady fowl is actually the crooked wanted criminal, Feathers McGraw, who plans to use Wallace's robo-trousers to steal a precious diamond. As soon as we meet Feathers, he already gives off this creepy vibe that sends red flags. From his unnerving stare to his silent persona, this villain somehow makes Penguin scary. Right from the get-go, he's audacious enough to back Gromit's rum to immediately create dominance over the poor dog. Then he begins pampering Wallace to make Gromit jealous, and plays very loud music to keep Gromit up all night. Just so Feathers can drive Wallace's best friend out of the picture. This evil bird knows exactly what he's doing. He's not just trolling Gromit for fun. That's what I've grown to love about Feathers. He's more than just a creepy penguin. He's an immaculate planner as a criminal. There's intense intelligence behind those dead eyes of his. Before his heist even takes place, he goes to extra lengths to prepare himself. Not only does he measure the architecture of the museum itself, but he also practices using the trousers with Wallace as a dummy.
Whoa! It's the wrong trousers, Gromit, and they've gone wrong.
When the day finally arrives, all that planning really does pay off, but it would have been very boring if this criminal was too perfect. So we get a few hiccups to throw in some tension. Take the fact that a master heister is sweating and panicking at things going wrong, means that we really should be stressed for Wallace's safety. Feathers' ultimate mistake, though, was to underestimate Gromit's detective skills and loyalty to his owner. This very good boy has spent the whole short investigating the penguin's strange behaviour, and will do anything to save his owner from prison. Though, to be fair, Gromit overestimates himself too, when he realises that this is an armed criminal. Feathers is capable of being 5 steps ahead of Aardman's best detective, and that's dang impressive. This all leads to one of the best climaxes in animated film, the great train chase, in which our heroes race to get the diamond back from a Feathers who is still armed with a gun, as Feathers cunningly changes tracks at every chance, while Gromit's intense track building skills help him to keep up with the penguin. The tension is palpable at every turn. Feathers is an iconic Aardman baddie, who embodies the strategic intelligence and 1950s swagger of a classic film noir crook, a creepy little guy that makes things very personal between Wallace and Gromit. Queen Victoria from Pirates and an Adventure with Scientists. Victoria is a regal monarch known for despising pirates, but she puts aside this prejudice when she meets a pirate captain with the last ever dodo, named Polly, who is the mascot for the pirate captain's crew, and becomes determined to get her hands on said rare bird. Vicky stages herself as a classy royal in front of others, but once the palace doors close, we see another side to her. A horribly tempered and childishly entitled nutjob who is unhealthily obsessed with her hate for pirates, seeing them as her greatest enemy, not out of moral duty, but due to them being her world takeover competition.
With their idiotic shanties, and their ridiculous hats, and their endless blasted roaring!
Thanks to her respectable queenly public rep, she can worm her fingers around the pirate captain and seduce him into the benefits of wealth and fame, going as far as to slyly tempt the captain with gold in trade for his principles, which she knows full well is his greatest weakness.
I seem to recall that you, piratical type, have a bit of a soft spot for shiny things.
The instant our heroes decide to save Polly, though, they meet the hidden wrath of England's monarch, who turns out to be using Polly as a social flex at a dining party where endangered animals are the courses. Yep, she's such an entitled and spoiled brat that she sees chowing down on dying species as a luxury, a ghastly privilege that audiences will downright hate her for showing off.
Just wait until you see what I've got for the main course.
Throughout the film, Victoria downplays her menace by intentionally leaning into the misogyny of the time.
You see, I might have the body of a weak and feeble woman.
But this self-deprecation is actually a ruse. Behind her crown is perhaps the toughest and fiercest Aardman baddie to ever grace plasticine cinema. A royal rogue who can easily take on the worst buccaneers that the sea has to offer.
Right.
The cherry on top of an evil cake has to be Imelda Staunton's terrifically dominating voiceover. It's a commanding cartoon baddie performance that fluidly slides between slimily snake-like.
One doesn't know why. Perhaps it's his luxuriant beard, or his gleaming teeth, or the way he smells faintly of coconuts. But we have taken a shine to this pirate.
And dementedly psychotic.
Dear little Polly here is going to be absolutely delicious.
Queen Victoria really does deserve the crown for the #1 spot on my list. She's a very underrated villain from one of Aardman's best features. Feel free to check out my other villain ranking videos, like the Rogues of Don Bluth or the Baddies of DreamWorks. I've been Jambareeqi. Cheerio, folks.